Okay, in week 2 now, we've got our lines laid out on here and we're ready to start roughing in. Uh, so we're ready to actually carve. But first we have to uh, figure out which knives we're going to start with to carve. And I'm going to start with this one, the 1.5" straight knife. And also I'm going to start with a number 3, looks like about a 5/8 inch wide gouge. So I'm going to try and use these two to do most of the roughing in. And to get them ready, I always start out by you take your strop. This one happens to be a leather, I think it was a leather belt that I had. I cut a piece out of it. And on the strop, usually you put it down, and then you're going to take your knife, and I usually do it like 10 times. I've already done this one that way, and then we'll go the other way. We'll flop it over and do 10 times back the other way. And then I'll come back and do 5 times, and then I'll come back and do 5 times the other way. And then I'll come back and do 3 times, and then I'll do 3 times the other way. And then I'll do 1 time for kind of my finish both ways. Now what that does is as you're doing it, you're sharpening with the powder actually, and it's just sitting on the leather. But it creates a burr on the edge of the knife. You can't hardly feel it. You'd have to have a microscope to see it probably, but and then as you do fewer strops, that burr gets smaller and smaller and helps make it cut better. And basically with the gouge, you do something similar where you do the outside of the gouge, which has got, that's your main sharpening edge right there. You do the outside of the gouge is where you're doing most of your sharpening. So we kind of roll it as we're sharpening, roll it in that direction. You're trying to get the whole surface as much as you can. And then to take that burr off the inside, you come back and just do like a 1 or 2 pass on the edge, and that takes the burr back to the other side. And then you can hone it again down to do the same basic thing that you're doing it 10 times, and then 5, and then take your burr back, and then you're doing 5 times, and take your burr back 3 times, do your burr back 1 time. Just trying to get that burr down as small as possible. Now, okay, we're ready to carve. Now we got our knife sharpened. We've got our lines laid out, basically. And like I told you the other day, you're making most of it's like a 1/4 inch wide. And then when you get down on in front of the eye, then you go down to 1/8 of an inch up to this, where this ledge is here. You don't want to mess with that yet. We'll leave that alone till last. So here we go. Now we're going to cut. And I'm going to use this bench hook table. Sometimes I use a towel, and sometimes I use the bench hook table. This is a bench hook table, and it's just a board. This is plywood with a couple of boards, one on the bottom, one on the top, so that you can put it up against the edge of the table, and it gives you kind of a solid surface to put your carving on. So now I'll get my gloves on. Hopefully you all got gloves, a carving glove, at least one carving glove. And then we're going to start just carving away that edge, and we're going to round it off. So now as we come down, you'll figure out which way is going to carve the best just by feeling it. That if it's carving and you're taking off a nice curl, you want to see a nice curl coming off. And we don't want to do too much on the beak yet, so we'll back away and work on most of the rest of it. Now as you change direction, and as you change, like as you hit the peak, the highest point, sometimes you'll have to change the direction you're carving. So if it acts like it wants to grab instead of cut, then you might turn your part around and carve it from the other side. And you're just basically, you're just trying to round it off at this point. So you're taking off the wood and you're letting the eagle come out of the blank, basically. You're freeing up the eagle and letting them come out. So now see where, and if you get to the point where you actually carve into your center lines, then you want to redo your center lines, refigure out where they go. And we're just doing the edge now. See, I'm coming down into this low spot. When you hit a high spot or a low spot, you usually have to change the direction of your knife. So as we're coming down, we can come down from one side and then we'll turn it around because that's the low point, and we'll come in from the other side. You can see the chips coming off there. We'll turn it around again and try and finish off that radius a little bit. When you feel it starting to grab, then you want to turn it around, come back the other way. We're here at the senior center doing the carving, so that's why you'll hear other people around too. All right, so we're just going around it and rounding it off as we go. And you don't have to be real picky about how close you are. You're just trying to round it off basically. And you put those lines on there just to help your mind's eye say, okay, I haven't gone too far yet, have I? Those lines just kind of help tell you that, okay, that's about where I want to go to start with on my first rough cut. So I've done that one line from here back. And again, we're going to stay away from that beak. We can take just a little bit off because it's got a burr on it, but you really don't want to take very much off that beak. You want to just leave the beak pretty much alone. Okay, now, same way now when you're doing underneath, you're going to go one way. Then when you hit a radius, a turning point, you're probably going to have to turn your knife around and go the other way to get it to carve where you're getting the chip off. And the chips you want to get, now like this, I don't know if you can see it on there, but this is a nice size chip. Figure out how to put it on here so you can see it. That's a nice size chip when you're roughing. You don't want it long and stringy. You want the shorter, about a ½ inch long. It gives you still have control over what's going on. You want to keep control of the knife at all times if you can. Okay, and we're working in this radius now under his eye. So this we had 1/8 of an inch on either side. Now as we come down farther, we're going in this direction still. This seems to be working. So you want to go by the feel of what you got. If it's working and you're getting a good chip, then that means you're going the right direction. And you can turn it around and come back, or you can turn the part around. Now, as you get near the bottom, you want to be careful, because if you come down in this direction, you can split the wood. Remember, the grain is running this way. Well, if you come down there, you can split this wood, and you don't want to do that. In fact, here's one that I was working on yesterday. This one's mahogany, and I don't know that you can see it, but I was cutting in this direction down towards the bottom, and I've actually got a crack that runs all the way across here. I actually cracked the bottom of that off. I think, I can save it. I know I can save it. I can glue it back if I have to, or I'll try. The way to avoid that is, Ray Fenning told me this yesterday, so the way to avoid that is on the bottom here, you want to cut this way across the grain and do your 1/4 inch like across the grain here first. And that when you come down, then it'll be less likely to split on you. So we're carving this across the grain, but we only want to really come into that circle, that 3/8 inch circle that we drew. We don't want to go in much deeper than that. So we'll come over here a little bit, work on this side, try to work to our line. Now turn it around, come from this side a little bit, across here. There we go. That's fine. Starting to round off. Starting to round off here. And in carving, most times there's more than one way to do it. The other way, a couple other ways you can do this is you can use like a Dremel or power tool and use that to round it off, or you can use a power sander, works really nice too to do this. But the standard carving where you're using a knife, this is the way seems to be working for me anyhow. But yeah, if you get tired, and sometimes it's hard when you're cutting across the grain like this, if your knife's not real sharp, it's hard to do that. And if you get tired of that, then you can always go to the sander or the grinder. And if you don't have one, you can borrow one from somebody else, or go over and use it where they've got it set up. Or you can go to like the Waterford Senior Center has a wood shop that if you're going to do a lot of the power stuff, that wood shop's nice. It costs like I think it's like $40 every 6 months that you want to use the tools in the wood shop. So we're still rounding everything off here, and we're going to follow our lines. And remember the grain, I don't know if you can see that. The grain is going this way on your part. You always want to remember where the grain is. So we'll keep working on it, and I'll